My husband, Mike, works as a well driller, which means his job looks like this. He goes to work for 2 weeks and then comes home for a week. He's constantly on the road. Mike has already suggested that I buy a condo closer to his job so he can come home every night and we can see each other more often. It's not a bad idea, but what am I gonna do there? My job is here, and it's not remote. All of our family and friends are here too. This city has great daycare centers, schools, and colleges for kids, and the apartment I inherited is a dream. We did major renovations after we got married, and it's a pleasure to live in now. I didn't want to change any of that, despite how much I loved my husband. And so we got together again. He had gone to work, and I was alone. On my way home from work, I went to the store and made a big purchase: bread, milk, meat, spices, cereal, tea cookies, and tea itself. When I get home, I take off my shoes and rush into the kitchen to start making dinner. I flick the light switch and the bulb starts to flicker, then stops working, then flickers again. Frightened, I turn off the light. What am I supposed to do? I don't know how to change light bulbs, and there's a short circuit. Mike always takes care of that, but he's not here. Not a good time. I'll get a neighbor, I thought. I run out of the apartment and knock on the neighbor's door. The neighbor, James, opens it for me. He's a little older than me, divorced his wife a few years ago. No kids, but he's always so kind and helpful. James, hi, can you help me with an emergency? I ask, out of breath. He nods, and I lead him to my apartment. We walk into the kitchen. I just turned on the kitchen light, and the bulb flickered. And then it stopped working altogether. Can you fix it? My tone was nervous. It's no big deal. Don't worry, he reassured me. The bulb just overheated. James threw out the old bulb and quickly replaced it with a new one. I was so grateful that I invited him to stay for dinner. He agreed and started helping me cook. We stood together near the countertop, occasionally touching each other with our hands as we prepared the food. I'm sorry, we repeated, bumping into each other constantly. Finally, I said sternly, stop apologizing already. James pulled me by the waist, sat me down on the countertop, and kissed me the way he had wanted to for a long time. That night, everything else disappeared. Dinner, work, even my husband's existence. The kiss lingered, taking me to a place I hadn't been in a long time, a place where the heaviness of everyday life melted away, leaving only the warmth of his lips, the hardness of his hands on my waist, and the pounding of my heart. My mind was telling me to stop, to pull away, to remember Mike, my marriage, my vows. But my body wouldn't listen. Instead, I started kissing James back. We stopped, breathless, our faces an inch apart. I could see the conflict in his eyes, mirroring my own. It was no longer just an innocent touch or a friendly gesture. It was a boundary crossing, and we both knew it. I shouldn't have done that, James finally whispered, pulling back, guilt creeping onto his face. No, it's not just you, I stammered out, still sitting on the countertop and hooking my fingers into the edge of it as if holding on for dear life. I kissed you back. An awkward silence hung between us, unspoken tension hanging in the air. I glanced at my watch time, seemed to have slowed down, but only a few minutes had passed. Reality returned, and with it, the weight of what had just happened. Mike was still there, working to provide for us. The apartment I loved, the life we'd built together, it all seemed distant in that moment. "I have to go," James said quietly, his voice strained. He looked down at the floor, clearly hesitant. "I think maybe it's for the best," I reply, though I found the words hard to say. As he turned to leave, something in me wanted to stop him, to tell him it didn't have to end like this, but I couldn't. When the door closed behind him, the kitchen seemed emptier than ever. I froze for a moment, still processing what had just happened. I looked at the dinner we never finished making. The knife on the countertop, the uncut vegetables. It all seemed like nothing now. I couldn't cook. I couldn't eat. I was lost in my thoughts. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. My mind replayed the kiss over and over again, and the guilt that gnawed at me. How could I have let this happen? Did it mean something deeper? Or was it just a moment of loneliness, an error in judgment because Mike was never around? Days passed, and I tried to focus on work, on the day-to-day, but everything was somehow wrong. I avoided seeing James, went different ways around the building, waited longer to leave my apartment. But the tension, the attraction remained, even if we weren't in the same room. Every time I thought about what had happened, I felt guilty. But I also felt something else. A week later, Mike came home. His usual tired smile met me at the door, and I hugged him tightly, trying to bury my guilt deep inside. He hadn't paid attention to what had happened in his absence, but I couldn't help but feel the weight of it. Everything seemed different now. That night, after dinner, Mike sat next to me on the couch and asked, "Have you thought about moving closer to my work? It would be easier for us that way. I hate to leave you alone like this." I hesitated. The thought of moving had always seemed impossible to me, but after what had happened with James, I wasn't so sure anymore. Would leaving here, leaving James behind, be the fresh start I needed? Or would it just be an escape from the mess I'd created? "I don't know," I finally said. "It's a big decision." "Yes, it is," Mike agreed, his hand gently squeezing mine. "But I want us to be together more." "I miss you." His words hurt. Truth be told, I missed him too. But I couldn't deny that part of me was reaching for the possibility of something else, something with James. I needed to make a choice, one that would either keep my life intact or tear it apart. That night, as Mike fell asleep, I found myself looking at my phone. James' number was still there. Our last conversation about the light bulb was still in the chat history. My thumb hovered over the screen. Should I text him? Should I reach out, even though I knew it was wrong? I put the phone down and closed my eyes, trying to banish the thoughts. Tomorrow I would make a decision.